Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to provide you with a review of the United States if you visit it as a tourist. I lived in this country for almost 20 years, so I kind of have an inside view about this country, but I'll bear in mind that you're visiting it as a tourist. So I'll just provide some tourist highlights and tips. So if you're coming from overseas, obviously you're flying here, so all the internet booking your flights online is very popular here in the US. Don't be afraid to book your flight online. My recommendation is don't use an agency. Just book your flight directly. Of course, if you're coming from Canada or Mexico, you might be driving or taking a bus or a train. Just so that you know, if you don't know this, here in the US, it's very popular to fly long distance. So if you're wondering, if you live further away from the border, if you're wondering, should I drive, is it common to fly? Actually, it is. Here in the US, long distance is very common to fly instead of driving. Where should you go? Well, the US is a very big country, so unless you have unlimited budget or unlimited time, my recommendation is to focus on one area of the country. For example, you might focus on the Northeast, New England, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington DC, that area. Or you might focus on Florida, the Northeast. Florida, has a lot of different sites and attractions. There's Disney World there, and Orlando, and Key West, and Miami Beach, and Tampa. Here in the West, of course, the West Coast, California, and all its sites, San Francisco, Hollywood, and so on. The Midwest and Las Vegas, of course, are very popular too. So depending on what your interests are, if you don't have, if you don't want to spend a fortune and you only have limited time, my recommendation is to just stay in one specific area. And what should you see in that specific area? Well, the US is a very big country, so things tend to be regional. So other than the capital and probably the Northeast, I'd say a lot of other areas in the US are very regional. So for example, if you come to California, you might find that a lot of the sites and attractions have to do with California history or maybe early Mexican history. It's not so much national. Of course, there are exceptions, but that's my overall experience here. And also, I just wanted to mention, I have several other videos discussing the top 7 US states to visit as a tourist, also the top 5 cities in the US to visit as a tourist, and a few other a few other clips. So feel free to check them out. They're in the playlist USA Travel in this channel. So is the US safe for tourists? My answer is definite yes. This is a very safe country for tourists. Usually the tourist areas are better protected by the police. There's more police presence there. Just like in any other part of the world, be aware of pickpockets, be aware of people trying to sell you counterfeit goods, like for example in New York City. Just take common precautions, and just if you're in a very popular spot, you should have nothing to worry about. There's a lot of tourists there, not only foreign tourists but domestic tourists as well. So things tend to be quite safe. If you're visiting, some odd attractions, some place not so popular or remote place, then just be aware, that people might not be used to foreigners so much. They might not be so open, but in general, Americans are very friendly. Where should you stay? Well, there are so many options. Here you can. By the way, before I continue with that, I wanted to mention about the safety. You shouldn't have any concerns with renting like a camper or renting a car. Typically, the US has a very good system. You're not going to be cheated if you rent from a legitimate company. Everything is very well established, and also the roads are quite safe when you're traveling. So continuing on with where should you stay, there's so many different options, and I'll just discuss the major ones. If you're on an extreme limited budget and you'd like to save money, the best places where you can stay are hostels. These are typically hostels where students stay, but they're not limited to students. Anybody can stay in them, and you can share a room with a lot of people, which is the cheapest, or you can even have your own private room, which is typically cheaper than a hotel room. So there's Hosteling International and a few other organizations you can check out on the web. They're worldwide, and there's a lot of hostels here in the US, and they also have hostels at the major tourist sites or near them. Of course, other places where you can stay are just regular hotels or motels. Motels are typically cheaper and not as good as hotels, but actually some of them are quite decent. If you want to save money, that's a good option. You can book these hotels and motels at the major travel sites, such as Expedia, Priceline, Booking.com, and so on. They're all very popular and they're all very safe. There's no issue to book through them. Another option you might want to consider is Airbnb. I personally never used it, but it's became extremely popular here in the US. It's actually based in San Francisco. So the typically I just looked up a few options here to stay in the San Francisco Bay Area, just for to do the research for this video, and my overall impression is it's a bit cheaper than hotels here. And also, you need to understand, although a hotel is cheap and you have this other option from Airbnb, probably the Airbnb one would be better, because the cheapest hotels here are actually not that good. They're actually, might be kind of dirty or might smell funny, or they're actually not so good accommodations compared to if you rent a room in a house, which would probably be much better. So definitely check out Airbnb. It's worth considering, because if you compare it to the cheapest hotel and the cheapest Airbnb, probably the Airbnb quality would be better. So what should you know about American culture, the culture of the US before you come here? If you're here for a very limited time, you shouldn't have any concerns. But just for your general knowledge and understanding of American culture, is that you have to be aware, Americans are very proud people. They believe the US is number one in the world, and they believe that this is the greatest country in the world, and they're extremely proud. So even Americans avoid topics like politics and religion. So if I were you, I wouldn't discuss these kind of topics when you're here, and especially when you discuss like where you're from, and don't try to get into politics and religion. Of course, as a tourist, you'll be going to a lot of touristy spots, and typically touristy areas are overpriced. Typically, they're the most expensive areas. Try to be smart about your money. Don't dine right where in the middle of the action is, like where exactly the touristy spot is, because if you just go a couple of blocks away from the touristy spot, or the next neighborhood, things would be like 50% cheaper. There's you need to be aware of, there's a lot of options, and simply because all the places in a touristy area are very expensive, that doesn't mean that the whole area or the surrounding area is also that expensive. It's kind of common sense, all over the world, but I just thought to mention this to you. Overall, Americans are very friendly. Just be aware that a lot of Americans haven't traveled abroad, and a lot of Americans don't speak a foreign language. So, but overall, they're very helpful and very friendly. Don't be surprised if you're lost and somebody offers to help you, especially in smaller places, smaller cities or smaller states. Just like I think anywhere else in the world, people in small towns tend to be friendlier and more helpful than in big cities. Having said that, unless you're probably in a small town, don't expect to make friends, especially if you're in a big city or a touristy area. People are very busy with their lives and their work, and they're very helpful and very friendly, but they're not to the point of being so friendly that they're going to become your friend and accompany you and help you out. It might happen, but I think in my experience, Americans are kind of friendly, but they're kind of busy, so they probably wouldn't spend that much time with you. So this is all I had. If you have any questions, please let me know. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I have a lot more videos coming up. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. And welcome to the US.